Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Create Smarter podcast by Five Tool Productions. I'm Tyler Pyburn alongside my buddy, Phil DiMartino.
That's nice of
Phil,
you to say.
You are my friend, Phil.
Oh,
Right?
you're my
my
friend.
sunshine. Right?
Oh,
My
that's
only
so,
sunshine.
that's so nice.
You make me happy right now because skies are gray. But anyways, what I want to talk about today is coming on the heels of the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So, we're a couple weeks out. Eagles took the W, but it's one of the things that everybody talks about. I didn't just watch the game for the Super Bowl. I watched it for the ads. The Super Bowl has become more than just about the ads. There's a lot bigger messages from a marketing perspective. What are some of the things that you want to kind of dive into today with that?
Yeah, I think, the ads are fun and they're goofy and, we talk about them for a couple of days after. But I think that it being, along with maybe like the Oscars, like the biggest night of advertising of the year, I think it really does shed a lot of light on what some of the trends are in terms of what big brands care about and what they think is capturing the attention of the masses and what works and what doesn't. And I think if you go back over the years and look at Super Bowl ads, I think it'll paint a really interesting picture of kind of the current state of media and marketing and tell a lot of lessons about what you should and shouldn't be doing from a content creation standpoint, all the way from tone to how you talk about a product to whether or not people care about your message. All of those things, I think it's like encapsulated in this neat little, total of about 10 minutes of video reel that you get over the course of the game. So I really do think it's an interesting little time capsule, and that's more what I want to talk about here.
Well, what's really interesting is you mentioned the Oscars, and the Oscars is kind of a who's who of Hollywood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the people that are in the audience, who's there, who's on the red carpet, that you want to see a little bit of everything. And the Super Bowl has kind of become that as well. Not just for who's there and attending the Super Bowl and who's in the crowd. You see the shots of Jay-Z and all the different people that are in person, but also now in the advertisements themselves, right? It doesn't feel like they're just paid actors anymore. It feels like all of the ads are made up of influencers at a certain point.
It's the biggest takeaway I had watching it, and it's jarring because there was a time when when a celebrity being in an ad, it was a big deal. Because like the idea of selling out was prominent.
This $1 million actor is all of a sudden in an advertisement? No way.
It's
happened everywhere.
It would be uncool, right? It's like you don't want to be in an ad. That means you're broke, right? Like and that mindset has shifted 180 degrees because
it has an opposite effect now. It's a complete different mindset.
It's insane. So the biggest takeaway for me is, you see all these ads and it talks to the idea of influencer marketing. And Matthew McConaughey hawked 7 different products just himself. He's that
all over the place.
You look at these ads, and I do think when you think about your own content, the lesson to take away from here is the value of influencer marketing in our current day and age. So there's 2 reasons why a big brand would hire a celebrity to be in their commercial. One is when you're watching in real time live, you say, oh, wait, is that Tyler Pyburn in that commercial for, Shure microphones? It's to get you to stop in your tracks and pay attention during the game. But much more importantly is the impact you have before and after the event when, the influencer is posting and it's teased, oh, this influencer is partnering with this company. And then they're posting on their Instagram, the ad after the fact. And they're getting their audience on their channels where their audience lives, and they're putting their stuff out there. We do small versions of this all the time with content creation, especially with colleges and things like that, where students are involved and they have really niche interests, or they're involved in a club or organization, and their second level audience is in some ways more important than your audience via your brand pages, because they are a trusted source, right? In the same way that influencers at large are a trusted source. Are you
following Hellman's Mayo, or are you following Billy Crystal?
Right.
And to me, that's one of the most, the best examples of what you're talking about here is, Hellman's Mayo did a great ad with, I think it was a remake of Hallie Met Sarah, essentially, right? And it was Billy Crystal and, was that Meg Ryan? Meg Ryan, yeah. Right? And they reenact the scene from the movie back in the 80s. And what was hysterical about it, I said, okay, you thought it was done. Next thing you know, throw in another influencer and Sydney Sweeney in there, right? Just because let's give it a little bit more legs.
Right. And then all of a sudden the whole point is, if you're watching and you see, oh, wow, was that Sydney Sweeney? Sure, that's one part of it. But the bigger part is I'm sure, I haven't checked, but I'm sure if you go look at her own channel, she's posting that ad and posting about it and reaching her millions of followers. And that's an awareness play because,
The Super Bowl is awareness, right?
Right.
It's all about eyeballs and awareness.
So in your case, when you're creating content, sometimes it's awareness, but, for Hellman's Mayo, it really is just awareness. You're not like necessarily convincing anyone that they should change their opinion about mayonnaise because Sydney Sweeney, is in an ad for it, but it's more just about, it's big scattershot awareness. The same holds true though when you're creating content with people, for at your scale, which is to say, who are the people who have an audience that you can reach via their channels that you can't reach via your own, right? And if Hellman's just posts, a run-of-the-mill commercial that doesn't involve a celebrity, well, they're going to reach a much different, much smaller audience than they can if they have 3 giant celebrities in it. Now, your influencers aren't going to have the reach that Sydney Sweeney does, but, you're also not trying to do the same level of sales that Hellman's Mayo is necessarily, right? So it's all on a scale and it's all relative, but the same idea holds, which is find the people who have audiences that trust them and leverage those people to get your message out beyond what you can do on your own channel. And I think that's number one A lesson of the commercials as we're currently seeing them.
We talk about all the influencers, and one of the things that you heard leading up to the Super Bowl this year is that, well, the Dung Kings are back, right? They're back for another year. And this kind of goes into your next point that before we were kind of planning this out, we were talking about the long-term content play. So the Dung Kings, the Affleck brothers, they were back as the Dung Kings this year. They recruited more B-list, C-list, and D-list
Bill
celebrities.
Belichick,
But they had a bunch of different influencers as a part of that. It almost turned it episodic as well.
Yeah.
Talk about the long-term content play, because this is an ad. Essentially, they did it last year. They're doing it again. They said it was successful, but they've also almost made it episodic in a sense.
Yeah, it's the perfect. We didn't even talk about which one I had in mind when I talked about the long-term play, but you knew exactly what I was thinking of. Leading up to it, there's teasers of Ben Affleck and Casey Affleck and Jeremy Strong doing all this weird stuff with being in a box of beans or whatever it was,
Method
and then
acting with beans, exactly.
And then you get into the actual commercial, and it's it's only 30 or 60 seconds, and it's 25 different celebrities, and they're taking digs at Starbucks, and Jay and Silent Bob are in it. I don't know if you caught that from my youth.
Yep, they sure are.
So you're appealing across generations here. You're like, oh well, for the millennials, you're gonna give them Jay and Silent Bob. You're like, what? Why are they here? I don't understand.
That's because they were in Dogma, which was also a Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, they're
Yes.
buddies with Affleck, sure. But the point is, you have 50 different influencers, but then on top of that, you find out after the fact that they have, a 7-minute short film all about the Dung Kings. And it's like, it's this whole long-term play that builds up starting in, December, and then it culminates and peaks with the ad, but then there's more to do. And then on top of that, they sell the Dung Kings costumes for Halloween, and they have the Dung Kings meal deal, and they have all these little short clips and these still frames and memes of Jeremy Strong covered in beans, and Bill Belichick pumping his fist. It's content for them, for the whole year.
Throughout the entire year, and people are going to continue to talk about it and say, "Oh, did you see what else they released in regards to the Dung Kings? The uncut pieces of content that have been created."
Right. It's not just the one ad. It's this long-term play, and it's not even, content marketing. I don't know if at any point they talk about the quality of the
How
product,
good is this coffee? I mean, not one point did you say, I wonder how that hazelnut
Did anybody
medium
drink a
roast
coffee in the
was. Yeah.
commercial? I mean, I didn't watch the 7-minute short film, admittedly, but I don't think anybody's drinking the coffee or eating the sandwiches
Because
in
it
the
was
commercial.
awareness. It was
Right.
just about awareness, but it continues to get people having that conversation about them.
And I think, the lesson here is that, long-term content plays, reusing content, thinking about things, if you think about it as an event, an event play, you have your live event. If all you do is focus on the audience you can capture at your live event, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're not being efficient, right? So leading up to it, you should be promoting, come to my event, come watch this content, come be a part of this. And then you take what you produce and you make it have legs, your version of the Dung Kings, after the fact, right? Make it have legs for months and months and months after the fact. Whether it's through still frames and, memes of, if you can get Jeremy Strong to dip himself in a bucket of beans, or if it's something a little more substantive, like, training or educational content, but, drip those snippets out over the course of months. Don't let it die in the vine, and I think that's a really good lesson to learn here of the people who created ads that stick with people beyond Super Bowl Sunday. it's the ones who did more than just run an ad, right? It's before, it's during, and it's after, and you can follow that model in your own way with your own content as well.
I loved how you said drip that content out after talking about coffee. Which
Yeah.
is just a perfect play there. Good
It's a
pun.
little pour over of your content over the course of a whole quarter or even a year.
I don't drink coffee, so it's okay. But let's move on. So we talk about long-term strategies, but in the same respect, we've got tiny attention spans, though, right? So that's one thing to note. We talk about a 7-minute movie, right, which is great, but these ads were 15 seconds, 30 seconds long. The attention spans of people are shrinking.
Yeah, and I think the way that a lot of these were produced really does speak to the fact that brands believe people don't have attention spans. The Dunkin' Donuts one is one where they're kind of betting on the long-term play. And then on the opposite side of things, you actually look at their commercial and it is chaos.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. A lot of the commercials, to the point of Hellman's, right? It was kind of scattered. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense. It's just supposed to peek you. What was that? Who was that? Was that Jay and Silent Bob? Was that Sydney Sweeney? Did I just see that? And it makes you want to just kind of take a second look at it up from your phone because you're staring at your phone during the commercial break and you're looking up and saying, oh, wait a second. Did that monster's eyeball just fall out? Right? It's completely scatterbrained, but it's just designed to make you look up for just a smidgen to see what that brand actually was.
Yeah, so if you actually watch, I'm sure there's a lot more science behind it for a lot of these commercials, but you can tell just in the way they're produced. It's, the first couple of seconds, the last couple of seconds are these quick hit dopamine blasts to drag you in because they know you're looking at 6 different screens while you're watching. And I think the lesson there is for people creating content is just remember you've got to do an outstanding job of getting to the point quickly, but grabbing people's attention with something different, right?
And keeping their attention for 30 seconds, right? I think that's the notion that I take away is not only just grab their attention in the first 3 seconds, but it's also keep their attention. And it's not, well, I've got an hour-long show, I've got to keep their attention. No, you've got 30 seconds.
Right.
How can you keep their attention?
And some of it is also about front-loading the important messaging, knowing that people have, really short attention spans, right? So the Dunkings commercial is a perfect example. If people only pay attention to the first 3 seconds, they know it's a commercial for Dunkin' Donuts, right? Yep. Unless you have something, I would bet you that 90% of those commercials, you're seeing a logo in the first 5 seconds of them, right? Because they're, that's the time when, you're most likely to have somebody grabbed. Or, you're doing some sort of a crazy bait and switch to try to, Sydney Sweeney at the end of the Hellman's thing, right? So the big lesson there is I think brands believe correctly that people have very, very, very limited attention spans. And you've got to think about what that means for you. And how do you make sure your core messaging gets across, knowing that people have these short attention spans? And then that goes into the long-term content play as well. Don't just assume because you post something once that people have seen it or digested it, right? You've got to get it out in different ways to different audiences, and you got to hit people multiple times because they're not seeing everything to begin with, first of all, but then even when they are, attention spans are at an all-time low. So you've really got to work to grab people and keep them.
Well, hopefully we kept your attention span this entire time, and it was just exhilarating content. Sorry, we don't have Ben Affleck or Sydney Sweeney that's going to
or Jeremy Strong. It's the funniest thing, too, because I'm like, I didn't watch Succession personally, and I'm like, is this a big draw? Like, I've heard of him. I know who he is, but I'm like, it's kind of like 6 levels deep of like, you have to know he's a method actor. You have to know this is like his personality. You have to have like read a profile about him.
He was from Boston. Right.
And it's all this stuff where you're like, this is like 7 layers deep, like you're really asking us to do a lot of work here, but I guess it works.
I think people might have. Well, we should probably check the Google searches for Jeremy Strong after that.
You're right. Jeremy Strong Boston probably peaked right there around the first quarter of the Super Bowl.
Yep. Well, hopefully you search Phil DiMartino and Tyler Pyron, both from 5 Tool Productions. And if you do have any questions, go ahead and make sure to reach out and ask. You can always just find us at Tyler@5toolproductions.com and Phil at 5toolproductions.com, or connect with us on LinkedIn too. Love to have that. So for Phil, I'm Tyler. This has been another edition of the Create Smarter podcast. We'll see you next time.